Hello everybody, and welcome to Theology 101. Today we are going to look at the book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs is the 20th book of the Old Testament. The Hebrew Bible has 3 sections: the Law, Prophets, and Writings. The Law contains the first 5 books of the Old Testament. The Prophets is made up of 8 books divided into the former prophets and the latter prophets. The Writings consist of religious poetry and wisdom literature such as Psalms, Proverbs, Job, and Song of Songs. So Proverbs is found within the Writings section of the Old Testament. Now there is not a consensus on the original setting for Proverbs. However, there are 3 possible settings from which these ancient Israelite wisdom principles came from: family, the royal scribes and counselors, and the religious scribes who study God's word. Some passages in Proverbs imply a family context since it addresses its readers as "my son" and urges him to listen to the teachings of his father and mother. Other passages can be attributed to King Solomon, implying that the royal court may have been the source of these passages, while other passages reiterate principles from God's law, suggesting a religious scribe wrote these passages. Let me go over the structure of Proverbs. We know the structure of Proverbs based on the different subscriptions given throughout the book. The first section, Proverbs chapters 1 through 9, begins with this subscription: the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, King of Israel, revealing that this section is a compilation of different proverbs authored by Solomon. Then the next section, Proverbs chapter 10 to 22 verse 16, begins with this subscription: the Proverbs of Solomon, showing again that it is more compilations of Solomon's proverbs. Then the following section, Proverbs chapter 22 verse 17 to Proverbs chapter 24 verse 22, transitions to differing sayings of the wise, referring to general wisdom principles from ancient Israel. The next section, Proverbs chapter 24 verse 23 to verse 34, continues with more sayings of the wise. Then Proverbs chapters 25 to 29 begins with this subscription: these also are Proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah, copied. Then we come to Proverbs chapter 30, which contains the words of Agur. Then the book of Proverbs concludes with the words of King Lemuel in Proverbs chapter 31. Now, what is the purpose of Proverbs? It is to show us God's righteousness in everyday life. So with that purpose in mind, let me give you an overview of the book of Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 1 through 9 provides parental advice to children. The speaker is a father speaking to his son. The readers, like sons, must choose between upholding the values given by the father that preserve society or follow a different path that creates instability. The father explains different dangers for young men, especially the desire to get rich quickly through criminal activity and being seduced by sexual pleasure. The father reinforces his own authority by appealing to God's authority to discipline his children. Although we never hear a mother's voice, we do hear from the voice of wisdom, who is personified as a woman. The voice of wisdom comes to support the father's voice by warning the son of different types of women and their sexual advances. Together, the father and the voice of wisdom encourage the son to direct his impulse towards his own wife and to pursue knowledge that comes from God. The next section, Proverbs chapter 10 to Proverbs chapter 22 verse 16, consists of brief observations about life. The sayings in this section does not have direct commandments, as was the case with Proverbs chapters 1 through 9, but with statements of truth based on observations. These observations comment on human behavior and the motives behind them. For example, we see observations regarding the importance of a wink, the effectiveness of a bribe, how generous people act compared to stingy people, the need to look beneath the surface of things, the loneliness of the heart during times of grief or joy, and how laughter can cover sadness. Then the next section, Proverbs chapter 22 verse 17 to Proverbs chapter 24 verse 22, we see wisdom sayings that mirror earlier Egyptian wise instruction, particularly from the writings of Amenemhotep. This implies that the author may have drawn upon earlier literary tradition, including Egyptian literature. Interestingly, there are 30 sayings in this section, which may echo the 30 chapters of Amenemhotep. Proverbs chapter 24, verses 23 to 34, focuses on issues of justice in society and advice on priorities, regarding major projects such as building a house, and encourages non-retaliation for offenses. This section overlaps with Proverbs chapter 6, verses 6 through 11, when talking about the attributes of a lazy person. The next section, Proverbs chapters 25 to 29, verse 27, comment on those within the royal court and society at large and how they are to act to maintain civility. The opening section comments on the different functions of God and their king and how their court should act. Then the remaining sayings apply broadly to Israelite society. For example, we see instructions that those who serve the king must report facts with accuracy. Also, people in general must learn self-discipline, the right time to act, and the need to speak during important moments. We see comments on the dangers of initiating violence and the advantage of intellectual discussion. The concluding section, Proverbs chapter 27, verses 23 to 27, goes back to the royal court and comments on how wealth and the crown will not last forever. Thus, a ruler is to maintain justice, which is illustrated with the contrasting conditions of the rich and poor in Proverbs chapters 28 to 29 that he must address. This leads to Proverbs chapter 30, verses 1 through 14, where we come to the words of Agur. Agur reflects by saying that he is stupid in comparison to God. Agur knows that true wisdom comes from God. God is in heaven, and he alone controls the heavens and the earth. Thus, there are certain questions that only God can answer according to Agur. In Proverbs chapter 30, verses 7 through 9, Agur asks that lies be far from him, and then asks that he be neither rich nor poor. He wants a modest life, since being too rich might cause him to deny God, and being too poor may tempt him to steal. Then he lists out different types of people who can negatively affect society, such as children who curse their parents, or those who are arrogant, or those with ungodly speech. Proverbs chapter 30, verses 15 to 33, continues with three observations regarding the different types of people who negatively affect society. Those who disrespect their parents will suffer, adulteresses who are not aware of their offenses will remain pure in their own eyes, and a violent person's need to control his anger. Then we come to the final chapter, Proverbs chapter 31. We see that these are words given to King Lemuel by his mother regarding righteousness, as depicted by two people. The first person is a picture of a just king. This king, with this power, is to advocate for the vulnerable and whose voices are unheard. The next person, a merciful woman, is highlighted with her work, status, and wealth. The purpose of her hard work, status, and wealth is so that she can bless others, including her family, servants, and show mercy to the poor and needy. The same people, namely the poor and needy, the woman gives mercy to are the same people the just king protects and speaks out for. So this woman compliments the king, where he does justice using his power, and she shows mercy using her status, wealth, and hard work. With Proverbs chapter 31, we see a summary picture of righteousness, where justice and mercy are two sides of the same coin that is illustrated through a just king and a merciful woman. Thank you to today's sponsor, On Reverence. They offer a free digital worship music app called Maskil. If you want to find out more, I'll leave some links below in the description box. If you missed the last video about the book of Psalms, I'll leave a link here for you to watch. Until next time, see you!